Welcome back to Trending in Education. Dan Stratford, Michael Palmer, Brandon Jones along with you on this week. We're talking robots. I want to check in with Brandon. You good? Brandon, you ready?
I'm amazing. I love robots. I heart bots. I have sort of Trending in Education fan fiction where all that I write myself, where all we do is talk about robots, and it's finally coming true again. So I am great.
And Mike, robots were part of our March Madness. Didn't make a significant run, but knew it would be something we came back to. We saw them at South by Southwest EDU, the Love It robot, which we talked about a couple of times during our time there. Are you excited to dive back into the robot world?
I'm absolutely excited. And I think the thing that's interesting here is that we have an opportunity to get social emotional baby about our I didn't oversing that because it's early in the show. I don't want to scare people off. But it's cool that, you know, what I found surprising about many of the articles that we shared is that rather than thinking of robots as purely cognitive and like mechanical replacements to like manufacturing jobs and
RIP to Robocon.
Yeah, exactly. Is that there's an emerging movement to sort of have robots fill therapeutic and emotional needs, which was the Lovot that we saw at South by Southwest EU does that. I'd like to start by maybe talking a little bit about Woody.
Please.
Woody was a pretty interesting robot who was beginning to sense human emotions. And I think that opens up a lot of opportunities to design human-computer, human-robot interactions in new ways. When you realize robots can perform therapeutic functions, but they also can respond to how we're presenting ourselves emotionally. That's really interesting, and that's something I don't think we've dug too deeply into in previous shows. Because when we have to keep coming back to the robot we want to be able to explore different aspects of it. So I don't know if we've really gone that deep on this particular angle. Plus, there's some other angles around robots in the classroom and teaching robotics.
I think let's stick with Woody for a second.
Please.
So I like Woody. So Mike, since you introduced Woody to us, do you want to say just another sentence about who this Woody friend is?
Well, first off, I think that's a picture of Woody in this article that we'll share out.
Right.
And it looks like Woody.
Is he made of wood? Partially?
He looks like he's made of wood. And I think he has an anthropomorphic head with like bear-like ears. Right.
Is that a mustache?
And then
That's a mustache.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, that just feels random. Like that feels random. And I don't know, maybe that helps him pick up our emotions because we're all looking funny at him because he has a mustache. And we're like, he's always like, you're confused. And it's like, oh, Woody, you nailed it
That's
again.
Right. Woody has identified one human emotion.
Which is confusion about his mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's happened in all 10,000 use cases.
Right.
Do you think he gives his mustache like a mischievous twitch, like in response to, I think there's some mustache twitch.
It's got to move side to side.
Yeah.
I don't think you put a mustache on a robot
it's Chekhov's mustache.
Unless it can, yes.
You intend this to go side to side.
Wow, look
That's
what you
right.
did there.
There you go.
Well done.
This is from Case Western Reserve.
Yeah.
This is where Woody clearly as a robot isn't all wood, but it looks like his like chassis is wood.
Yes,
Like that.
yes.
That's what I took from this picture.
Yes.
But it was interesting. They were talking about the ability to identify human emotions, but also the real timeness of that.
Yep.
So the time that they were citing, these researchers working with Woody at Case, were saying that he can identify the right or it Woody. I think it looks like a man.
I think I think that's
his preferred pronouns are he.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Woody can identify human emotions correctly 98% of the time and instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And the previous benchmark they're down from is 3 seconds.
Right.
3 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, like geologically speaking. But when you're talking about real-time response to human emotion, 3 seconds is a long time.
Yeah.
So like it can be the sort of uncanny valley is not the right terminology here, but like the verisimilitude of a robot experience to a human one, that time immediacy of it is maybe the most important thing.
Yeah.
Or certainly among the more important things. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And it's it made me think about poker right away. Because I was thinking, AI has already beaten us at chess. They finally knocked us out at Go. The robots won at Jeopardy years ago. Watson did that. Next thing you know, Woody's going to be showing up at the World Series of Poker. And I just wonder if you could confuse him. Like, I don't know if I didn't see that in the article, but I do wonder if you could intentionally try to mislead. And if
it's interesting,
if that's are they gameable?
Well,
Because like I think frequently the context is more authentic,
right?
But if it was almost like a reverse Turing test where you're trying to fool the machine, I don't know. I think that'd be interesting because maybe you could bluff Woody out of the finals of the World Series of Poker.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how easily Woody could pick up on a tell, right? Like if Woody detects the presence of multiple emotions being conveyed in the same facial experience, like the same facial expression, that might be indicative of more of like a higher incidence of bluffing. Right. So, and I would actually bet that Woody would be better than humans over time at being able to identify bluffing. I think that like is a really interesting test. I like that.
Although I wonder if you could fake bluff them then too, though, because could you like do the tell? I'm touching my nose. Hey Woody, have you noticed that I'm touching my nose?
Right.
And then Woody goes, "Oh, computer is calculating that you may be misleading me," and then he's like, "I will call you."
But this is like I put poison in all the cups. Like this is a little bit land war in Asia.
Well done.
But I think it's interesting just as a moment note on while we're still on Woody, because I do want to go on to that other article too, or one of the other articles about robots in the classroom. So it's machine learning and deep learning. The way that they are able to do this real time is that they combined. I'm just reading this directly from the page here, so it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. They combined two pre-processing video filters to another pair of programs. So, it's the sort of combined outputs of a number of different machine learning driven inputs. I think is really interesting, and that portends, I think really interesting developments in robotics and in the robot human interaction to come.
Yep. And you do like the human computer interaction, which robot computer I guess is human robot.
Don't forget us already.
The robot computer interaction is also quite interesting because the interesting thing is, what do you do with this type of robot once you have it? Because the human computer interaction is useful, but in what kinds of contexts? So like, where does it make sense for AI and a robot to be able to read the human emotion of the person that it's interacting with? I mentioned poker, but what other context? So like I imagine service robots or therapeutic robots. They mentioned picking up on the autism spectrum, picking up on early onset of dementia. That stuff is pretty interesting. So like, even though the example is somewhat comical when you look at Woody.
I'm trying to twitch my mustache here
and his
laugh.
his fake mustache. Well, I guess maybe it's real. I don't know, but there are real use cases that are less nefarious than a lot of the robot overlord stuff that we tend to gravitate towards, around like identifying when people might need help sooner than sort of a human agent could, and that to me is really exciting because I think it's easy to fall prey to the dystopian scenarios around robots. Like there's a lot of really exciting stuff in this article. And just thematically around therapeutic robots.
I thought so too. And I think a version of a type of robot, just building on what you're saying, Mike, that could benefit from this kind of technology is our educational robots.
Yes.
So
yes.
Just one more note before we go to that article. It's talking about the human expressions divided into 7 emotions. Those 7 emotions: neutral, happiness, anger, sadness, levelist, disgust, surprise, and fear. And there's 2 things that are interesting about that to me. One is that it's pan-cultural.
Yep.
So, you can have robots that, if they're perceptive on this front could bridge a language barrier that could exist. Like, you don't necessarily need to program robots only or always to be fluent in every language, sort of natural language processing. You can actually pick up a lot of that, like pan-culturally, through just expressiveness, which I think is interesting. But then all of those emotions, I think those are present in learners at times too. And one of the things that I thought that was interesting in one of the other articles, which we'll share out, was how this was in the Science News article. So they talk about a lot of educational robots, but some of them were one test. They gave half the children a robot that made growth mindset comments like, "You're not afraid of a challenge. I like that." And the other were given a robot that only said, was sort of functional. You solved the puzzle. I think that building on that, like a robot that could identify real time whether you were engaged or nervous or whatever, could provide real time social emotional sort of crutches to bring you back to be engaged with the learning material. I think that the possibilities of that are really interesting.
As you go through there, Mike, and figure out the classroom implications of these social emotional robots, and as you take maybe the Woody robot or something of the similar process, do you see it as net positive? As all things you were talking before, we can get nefarious here, we can talk about the dystopian aspect of robots in the classroom, but it seems like these all are pointing in that positive vein, that there are positive implications for these things. Do you see it that way, and do you see next steps for implementing and using these more positively in the classroom?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like the more pessimistic, cynical, dystopian scenarios around robots, they may come true, but I feel like we're a pretty long way off. So like the majority of these contexts are really human powered and then augmented by robots. And whether the human is alone, but in most of these contexts, particularly in a classroom, it's not like you're replacing the teacher with the robot. It's more that the teacher has additional tools in her classroom that include robots, and the tools are getting better. So like, in some ways, it's almost like the word robot brings, for many of us, not Brandon, but for many of us, brings some negative connotations and like some sci-fi pre-associations that make us more distrustful and skeptical about using that intervention, where if it was just called something else more novel and fresh, I'm not even going to make it up. I think that might be more easy for people to accept. And then I think the related thing is the anthropomorphic nature of the robot almost leads to the fear that they're being designed to replace us. So I think that's where the uncanny valley can actually help in the classroom too. Also with therapeutic robots, like frequently they don't look like humans, and that's intentional. And frequently they look like a comfortable toy that, is non-threatening and is actually designed to be supportive. And I think once you sort of extend a little bit beyond the kind of iRobot sort of trope, and you dig a little further into new tools that kind of can enhance learning in a classroom. I think there's a big upside here, and like Brandon, I'm supportive of this.
I think the anthropomorphized piece is really interesting. That was one of the other takeaways for me from this article. And then it linked to, I guess, a Science Direct article with an abstract of a piece of research that talked about how adults and children, and this is a sort of a pan survey of 33 different surveys, adults and children respond more favorably generally to a physical robot than to a digitized robot. And even, I thought this is interesting, even when that same physical robot is digitized with that avatar. So like imagine the Lovot, the physical actual robot that is responding. Like if you took that same, robot and put it on a screen, you still would not respond as well to that, or the adults and children in these surveys still did not respond as well to that. And that responding as well, and making air quotes, is measured in terms of performance and retention and a lot of different measures. I think that's interesting. And the idea that, we talked about robots. You talked about robots talking to computers. Robots and computers are pretty similar, but for sort of how they interact with the physical world around them.
Yep.
And so, computers have been in classrooms for a long time. But the idea that robots could bring that learning to children, particularly in ways that are new and accessible and different and emotional, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, agreed. And also, like, the physicality of the relationship is more what we're wired for too.
Right.
So, like, we've talked a lot about screenlessness and the problem of sort of that interface. If the interface changes to look more like a doll or a toy,
Right.
like, that's more likely to be something that that a child will gravitate towards, rather than something that feels sort of cold and flat and digital. I think that's really it's an interesting thing. And also the tactile, like we talked about it a bunch, like the trend back towards like physically connecting, like being in the same physical location as others, something we talked to Rohit about a couple weeks ago. I think robots are interesting in that respect, because in a way they really are, they are a computer, or each one is a computer. Maybe they all are one.
Yeah, it's the Borg.
But each one is a computer. But the fact that they have like a physicality to them, and that we can actually engage with them in a tactile way, and also in a almost like nonverbal communication, I think is a really interesting idea.
I think it was CES last year that the Aflac, the robot that was in the hospitals and was dealing along these similar lines. And I find that also an intriguing thing to understand better and me do more reading on, is the difference between humanoid looking and animal robots. Like, how do people interact with a robot dog or a robot cat, or even a lovat, or something that's more representative of a pet rather than representative of your best friend? And how do people emotionally react there, with the same sort of reference points that maybe Woody has, as with the mustache and everything, but as a dog, and can sense, oh, this person needs cuddling, this person needs me to go away, this person needs me to do those things. I think is a really interesting reference point moving forward, and how people react with those as therapy robots rather than therapy animals.
No, I mean, that's huge. The Aflac duck, I think, was really interesting at CES last year, and like that was part of what made me dig into the summary of the Mental Floss article, where they were talking about different therapeutic robots that are out there. And interestingly, a lot of them are coming into the marketplace because it's tough to find and train that many service animals, like therapeutic, like dogs.
Sure.
And other pets have been found to have a lot of really therapeutic value, particularly for the aging, and then also for kids, when they're in like an ICU. So yeah, I mean, I find that sort of gets back to I'm going to sing it a little more, social emotional baby. Like it's a little more. I think it's a surprising way to think about robots, and we talk about the importance of social emotional learning in the classroom. It is interesting to think about how teachers need additional tools to help their students learn social, emotional components to their lives, and actually having access to things like therapeutic robots, I think, is really interesting. And then you pair that with the ability to, in more of a clinical setting, to like identify symptoms, early onset of things that may need to be corrected for. It's kind of I think it's a pretty positive direction for robotics to take. So yeah, love this stuff.
Brandon, I want to be respectful of your love of the robot and the robots. Do you have any final words here as we close out this episode of Training and Education?
I couldn't be more excited. I'm trying to be more excited, and it's impossible. I think that, although I do think it's probable that the way to get to the robot overlords is through like the lovable, helpful robot
100%
phase.
Yep.
So I recognize the eventuality that I'm maybe bringing about as soon as possible. But yeah, I mean, I think, there are places where, there are humans who can use assistance in some way or another. And that could be learning, that could be tourists at an airport, that could be someone with a disability, where robots can provide more reliable and with minimal upkeep, persistent support than another human or an animal could. And I think in a world where we respond well to them where they are, and where like Woody responds well to us, like I think that's really exciting. And I am genuinely optimistic about how we can get those robots facilitating more of the things that we as humans uniquely enjoy doing than not. So I'm excited about it.
More to come on robots as the year goes on here on Trending in Education. Thanks so much for listening. As always, share us with a friend, share us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Trending in Ed. Same over there on Facebook, trendingineducation.com. We're back every Tuesday morning. Also, extras coming your way. Game of Thrones is back. You'll hear The Citadel. You'll hear so much coming from us here in April and the months in the future. And special thanks to everyone who does listen. March, our most downloaded month in our history. So thank you for that as we look back and really celebrate everyone who listens to us. We appreciate each and every one of you. Till next time, you've been listening to Trending in Education.